Well, hey, Holy Business. I'm excited to have Jake Stahl back today. You may remember him from his first visit with us in season 1, but he is the mind mechanic and he is many things. But most importantly, he is back now with a new book, an amazing new tool that he's founded through his new company, Orchestraight. And he has got a great framework. If you are looking for a way to own the room, his STRATA procedure will help you in many ways. But more importantly, Jake is here to share his story of why this journey has mattered so much to him, what it's done for his life, how God has used it, and how he hopes he can help you too. So join me now for my conversation with Jake Stahl. And I think we are good. Everything looks good on both ends. So go us. We're very talented at hitting start.
Well, hey, listen, there's a lot that goes into that.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong. And sometimes that part doesn't even work. So before we get into what will be in the podcast itself, in the episode, are you good? Are you open to praying? That part's never broadcast, but all right, go ahead. You'd love if I would lead it or you will lead it?
If you would lead it.
Oh, absolutely. All right. God, thank you so much for this time with Jake. Thank you for just the creativity and the innovation you have gifted him with, God, and how he uses that to pour out on others and to demonstrate his love for you, but just by sharing it with the world. I just pray for his joy to exude in this, his intellect and his skill set, God. We pray a blessing over this book that he has worked so hard on to benefit others, and that others will see the value in him and the work of his hands, God, that you've poured out of him. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Jake, I'm so excited you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the honor of having me back.
Well, so much has happened in your world since we talked last. So I think since you've been on, you've obviously lived, refined, built a whole new company, written a book, just a couple things, right? So
yeah, there's been a couple of sleepless nights.
So bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so God has really blessed me. I've had some ideas over the past year or so that have really been inspired by God in my many conversations with him, both late night and during the day.
That's a good way to put it.
I had been doing something called neurostrategy for a while, and this is relatively new since the last time we talked. So I coined a term that combines behavioral psychology, social psychology, and neurolinguistic programming, which Tony Robbins made famous. And I combined that into a coaching method that I've been using for quite a while. But a year ago, I thought, this would be really cool in a SaaS product. So in December of 2024, we started developing this SaaS product we call Orchestraight. And it takes behavioral triggers and hook point theory and social psychology studies and neurolinguistic programming, and it boils it into a communication method that is designed to communicate in exactly the way the human mind processes information or makes decisions. And it's geared towards small business owners or entrepreneurs to help them grow their business, email, translate a transcript from a call they were on. It'll help them with their offering, their value prop. And it's really taken off. We have a lot of companies who are using it. We have a lot of individuals who are using it. So we've been really blessed. I mean, it's been an amazing journey.
And I've obviously seen some of the content on it, and it sounds like it really does a lot of really nice heavy lifting. How does someone engage with that? What do you think is let me rephrase that. What do you think is the biggest benefit to someone who's listening and going, why do I need this for my growth?
Yeah, it's a great question, Candice. And here's the truth of what's going to happen this next year. This year in 2026, 5 million new small businesses will start. Wow. By the end of 2026, 40% of those will be out of business. By the end of 2031, 90% of those businesses will be out of business. And what we found, Candice, was it's not that people don't have a great business idea. Many people are geniuses and come up with things that are completely new and wonderful, but communicating them gets to be the problem.
Oh, that's good.
How do I create a value prop that sticks? How do I create a sales message that makes people want to buy? How do I create a CTA that makes people want to take action? Orchestraight solves for that. So that big communication problem we have as small business owners, how do I write a great email? How do I write a great marketing piece? How do I create a value prop that when I get off the phone with somebody, it's all they think about for days at a time? Orchestraight helps solve for that problem. So we take the bad communication piece out of it, and our hope is that small business owners will get that edge they need, that they're not going to go out of business.
Now, what do you say to people who are like, I'm in a really technical field, I don't know how this would apply to me? I personally meet with a lot of engineer construction types, and they always struggle to see where these types of resources can work in more technical fields and industries.
Yeah, so here's what typically happens. We normally kind of go towards an industry that fits who we are as a person. So in other words, you're not going to see somebody who has a real mind for numbers go to clown college to be a clown at a carnival, right? You typically don't see somebody who has a distinct love for medicine decide to go into the food industry. Sure. If I love numbers, I may go to accounting or engineering. If I love medicine, I'm going to go to become a doctor or a nurse. So when you talk about engineers and you talk about people that work with highly technical things, they tend to communicate that way as well. But not all of their customers do.
Correct.
So what do you do in those scenarios? So Orchestraight helps bridge that gap from I'm a huge numbers and engineering person down to I need this prospect to understand what I'm saying. And Orchestraight bridges that gap.
That's awesome. How do people connect with you?
So you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm Jake Stahl on LinkedIn. I'm the one that looks like me. And if you're just hearing the audio on this, I'm the CEO of Orchestraight. So you'll see that in my thing. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm Jake the Mind Mechanic. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. You can go to my company website, which is orchestraight.com, which I'm sure you'll put in the call notes.
I will.
And then I also have a podcast called Own the Room with Jake Stahl that's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Now, are you still doing consulting work as well and working with sales teams? I'm sure you're doing all the things.
Yes, so I have a number of corporate clients as well as individual clients that I do consulting with. And in between all of that, I do my Orchestraight CEO stuff, and I managed to fit a book in there. So my book was published and is available on Amazon. It came out in December on Amazon.
Yeah, and I on the Orchestraight piece, I ask about the consulting piece because, to your point, when you're dealing with some people and we're all speaking our own language, Orchestraight is almost a step after maybe having a conversation with you about how to work on your sales process and work with your team, because then it may explain the why a little bit of needing support in people unlike yourself to help grow those areas. So I wanted to make sure I included that because that's before all the other things. Sometimes they need a conversation the most.
Yeah, and that's a great observation. And we have a lot of consultants who use Orchestraight in that fashion. They'll say, here's the conversation. Now go work with Orchestraight to create the verbiage, to create your marketing pieces, to create your copy on your landing page of your website, and then come back and we will fine tune it person to person. So this is used as a companion by many consultants to work with their clients.
What a great tool. I hadn't even thought about that. Now, okay, so we've launched a company. Tell me more about Own the Room.
So I don't know if we talked about this in our last podcast, but 13 years ago, after a third knee surgery, I got addicted to opioids. And it led to a 2-year spiral where I lost it all. Lost my marriage, my house, most of my savings. My credit score was pathetically bad. And what I found, Candice, was when I was on my road back to recovery, the thing that frustrated me was that I would look on the cover of People magazine and I'd see a star that died from an overdose or they were addicted, and everybody would go, "Oh, poor you." But when they looked at me as an addict, it's like, you should know better. You're bad. This is criminal. And I always wondered, why was it okay for them, but it wasn't okay for me?
Oh, wow.
What I found, Candice, was it was the way you show up, and it's your presence. It's not what you say. It's what you put off in the way of your signals and your presence before you talk to somebody. So I started a several-year struggle of getting back into the room with people who used to respect me who didn't anymore. And I was in the room with people who, they'd been warned about me because I had been an addict. And so STRATA, which I detail in the book, is the method that I use to get back into those rooms.
And I want to get to STRATA in a minute, but first, tell me a little bit more about what that was like. How did you come to the choice to reach out and try to, renew these relationships or at least receive feedback from them? Because anyone who is at any level of high level leadership or who has started a business or has owned something has experienced burned bridges. And in many cases where they're kind of like, how do I avoid this person eating me alive later? Or just unhealthy fear surrounding relationships that haven't worked out, especially in business and ministry. So I'd love for you to unpack that journey a little bit more.
Yeah. So, I, at one time during my addiction, thought, I can make this work. I will just continue to take pills to stay at an even keel and everything will be great. And you suffer under the illusion that you're in firm control when you're not. And it got to the point where I realized it was a losing game. It was 2 years into it. It was a losing game. There was no way I was going to make it. So when I went through rehab, which, by the way, is pure misery, when I went through rehab and I came out the other side, I tried desperately to talk my way back into rooms. I thought my prior reputation, I was an international speaker. I had spoken all over the United States. I have 7 patents. I was quoted in a dozen books. I thought my reputation will get me back in the doors again. And it doesn't. So I tried to talk my way back into rooms, and it wasn't what I said, it was how I showed up. So when I was showing up into rooms, when you try to talk somebody out of a story, it's amazing how much they firmly embed themselves back in the belief of that story.
Gosh, that's so true.
Yeah. And, it's the brain does what's called thin slicing. It's a psychological term, and it basically means we make a snap judgment in the first 2 to 10 seconds. Then our brain works really hard to substantiate what we've deduced. And it works even harder to disregard things that prove it wrong. Yeah. So when people had gotten to that stage, and I was in Narcotics Anonymous at the time, there's a part in there where you go and you make amends. And that was tough. That was really hard. And you have to do a fearless moral inventory of what did you do wrong and what would you change. And I will say it was a real soul-searching time. But what I found was when I started to change the way I showed up and wasn't as concerned about what I was saying, I found that when I showed up in the right way, which is detailed very heavily in the book, when I show up the right way, my words are taken more seriously. So I was under the illusion that words came first, when in reality, words come much later.
When you talk about presence versus the words you use, what do you think leaders are misunderstanding when it comes to influence?
I think the biggest thing we misunderstand is that 80% of communication is nonverbal. So let me give you an example. if you look at a headshot online, a headshot somebody uses for like LinkedIn,
Sure.
there are 3 things in a headshot that help you establish trust right away.
Oh,
the 3
tell
things
us
are
more.
a huge smile, sincere,
Okay.
a little bit of crow's feet, bonus points for teeth, real nice smile.
Bonus
Second
points for
is
teeth.
your posture, right? Either
Okay.
straight up or leaning in a little bit. So you're showing the person that you're there and you're attentive. But the third part is the coolest. Psychologists have actually found that if you have a slight tilt to your head, you're exposing your jugular, which is literally the most important spot on our body we have to protect. But by showing you trust the other person with that tender spot, you're automatically getting them to trust you. So it's kind of reciprocation theory. Yeah, it's been proven time and time again. So we often look at it and we say, oh, in a headshot, I want to show I'm having fun in skiing, or my best shot with me with 2 friends. So I cut off my 2 friends in the picture and I just put me. Your picture says a million things, and many times we blow it. So what I think leaders tend to miss out on is your body language you're using when you're in the room, what you're doing before you even show up, how you're presenting yourself to your people literally determines how serious they're going to take you when you speak to them. And most leaders are, I got to say the right thing, I got to be persuasive, I got to be strong and motivational. Has nothing to do with that.
Wow. Making personal note to check all my headshots later and see what I have.
Yeah, whenever I give this talk, everybody's like, oh, I got to go look at my headshot.
I got to go check around. What do I even have on all of them? That's fascinating. Yeah. So with that, you talked so the words don't matter as much as, body language, nonverbal, coming in with confidence and kind of vulnerability on some level, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is what Candice, people want.
It's very true. And when I work with clients, one thing I hear a lot is, well, I want them to accept me for me. Okay. That's a losing battle. It's not going to happen until you've established that relationship that allows them to see the real you. But if you're going to have a headshot that shows you holding a dog or, shows you skiing off a cliff, I got news for you. You're given an impression that is speaking a million words, and you may be losing a customer before they even talk to you for the first time. And that's just the headshot. There's a million other things you can be doing. That's just the headshot.
That's actually interesting. I'm really glad you said that, because there is a current right now sociologically, I feel like, where we struggle with this.
Yes.
I am who I am. You have to take me as I am, which can be true. And it can be true in your friend groups, but when it comes to sales, perception is a big part of the story. Whether you're selling yourself, your brand, a product, whatever it is, when it comes to influence. So that's really important to share, is we can't change the way we're wired.
Right.
Like we can say those things out loud, but there's still a subconscious current to everything, is kind of what you're saying. And that's making some of the decision.
Yeah, and there was a great study that was done on this. If you don't mind, I'll share it real quick.
Oh, no, share.
They had a bunch of college students look at clips of professors giving talks. But there were 2 conditions. They could only see 2 to 10 seconds of the clip, and there was no volume. So they were just
watching like body language and presence.
100%. And after that, they gave them a sheet of qualities that they picked up in the video, and they were supposed to check off the qualities that they perceived or saw just from 2 to 10 seconds of no volume.
Okay.
They then took group B, which was all the students who had those very same professors for a full semester and had sat through their lectures. And they had them fill out this same questionnaire to find out, what traits did you see? How does a professor come across? What they found, Candice, was both of the feedback sheets were almost identical.
Wow.
So it just goes to show you that 2 to 10 seconds of no volume is remarkably accurate. And for the people who say you have to accept me for me, you have to understand, once they get that 2 to 10 second slice, Their brain is then going to look for everything to justify exactly what they're thinking.
The belief.
And
okay.
if contradictory data comes in, their brain is going to actively fight against that. So first impressions really are everything. That's not a lie. It is scientifically proven.
Why do you think this message, why do you think Own the Room is so important for right now? Why do you feel like this was the time to communicate this message for you?
Because with all my clients, including my corporate clients, I hear the same frustrating thing. How can we say this that's going to make a difference? Maybe we're saying the wrong thing. Yeah. It's like, listen, it's not about what you say. It's about how you show up, and then they will determine how effective what you say is. And we've all experienced this, right, Candice? How many times have you met somebody that you want to like them, but in the back of your head, you're like, there's just something, I'm not sure how to explain it, right?
You're trying and you can't get past it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So your brain is always looking for signals. So in the book, we talk about signals and why they matter so much. And I give real life coaching scenarios with corporations where signal literally made or broke a deal.
Yeah. Wow. Now, signal is kind of the first step in STRATA. I was hoping you, well, first of all, STRATA, which I want you to break down in a minute, but you describe it as perception, not persuasion. Why is that distinction so critical to you?
Well, you know, persuasion is a word that can have weird connotations. You know, a lot of people say persuasion is manipulation, and it can be. Please understand, I'm not arguing that point. But we are always persuading others. Always. Always. Intentionally or unintentionally, we're always persuading, right?
Yeah. So sometimes in the opposite direction, not even meaning to.
Exactly. And perception is really what it's all about. Perception is reality. And I'll give you a great example. When was the last time you stayed at a hotel?
Last month.
Okay. And I'd be willing to gamble that outside the elevator doors were mirrors.
Yep. That
actually came from a maid at a top hotel chain. The hotel chain was concerned. People were complaining that the elevators weren't going fast enough and they had to wait. So they looked and they said, oh my God, how are we going to do this? We can't afford extra elevators, and we can't afford, to make one just go the top, to the bottom 10 floors and the other go to the top 20. We can't afford to make those changes. So a maid said, why don't we change their perception of the time spent waiting for the elevator? So you put a mirror there, you give them time to gussy up and see how they look. And before you know it, the time is up and the elevator is there.
Wow.
Perception is really everything. Politicians rely on this. Marketing agencies rely on this. And
when I was in the Fortune 100
as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we should. It's funny you said that because I remember when I taught executives in the Fortune 100, one of the biggest lines was their perception is our reality. And that was one of the things we always tried to teach. Yeah. Like recent grads coming into the workforce with us. So that's funny you say that. Also, I'm quite thankful for that maid, because I can't tell you how many times there's been like a crazy hair right before I get on the elevator. So good on her. Yeah.
And listen, modern companies use it. Look at an Uber app. You call an Uber, you see where the car is, you know the person's name, you can read the display. It changes all perception of time.
Wow. That's so true, because I like to watch the driver when he's close.
Yeah, right.
So with that, all right. So with STRATA, it's time. Let's get into it, because I have so many questions, but we should probably tell everybody what STRATA is. So can you break it down for us? Like, give us a quick and dirty of each one. I know signals first, so let's start there.
Yep. So we all send a signal. Whether it's the way we dress, the way we approach, the way we talk, we all send a signal. When we send a signal, we trigger something in the other person. And it may have to do with business, or it may have to do with the time your dad yelled at him 20 years ago. And they just associate the way you talk with the way their dad yelled at them. Right?
Great point.
So we always trigger something, and our job is to notice that. And then R is reframe. So reframe what they noticed. And the best way to demo a reframe is a doctor says to me, Jake, you have a disease with a 20% mortality rate. Sounds bad on the surface, but my reframe is so I have an 80% survival rate. Right? It's just a reframe. Then I need to anchor what we're talking about.
Okay.
So anchoring is very important. And then I want to transfer my idea, which means I want to make the idea theirs, not my own.
Okay.
And then I want them to take action, which is the last A in STRATA. And it sounds complicated, but Candice, many times all this happens in seconds.
Give me an example of anchoring.
Sure. So in the book, we talk about the fact that there was a team who was being told that you need to just face rejection. You need to just get a stiff upper lip and face it. It's going to happen. And the team's like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And so I said to him, I said, if you could just be honest with the customer at all times, what would that mean to you? And I'll clean this verbiage up. In the book, it's not as clean, but I'll clean the verbiage up. They said it would mean I'd have to give a crap. And that became their rallying cry. So we put give a crap on a sign. And I said, whenever you're feeling down, I want you to anchor this in your head. I need to give a crap. And it's funny because I even got an email from the CEO and he's like, what is that sign hanging in their office? And I'm like, it's an anchor. Leave it there. It's good. But you need to anchor something you do with emotion, Candice, so that people are really invested in taking the action that you're talking about.
I envisioned Ted Lasso's believe sign just then. Like that was
perfect. That's exactly right. That's an anchor. Perfect.
I'm going to say they stole it from you now. They stole it from Give a Crap. So
I could only wish.
Yeah. Just write him an email about those royalties today. Okay.
Yeah. I'll send him a note and said it was from you and that you said it was okay for them to pay me.
There you go. That I carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question. You know, a lot of people listening, they're high performers. None of us, nobody considers themselves that, but it's true. Yep. So with that, what do you find high performers within STRATA? Where do they struggle the most?
In the transfer section.
Okay.
And
tell me about that.
I say this to everybody. So when we have a great idea and we sell them on the great idea, there's a difference between selling them on the idea and having them make it their own. And what I mean by that is this is where buyer's remorse kind of sets in.
Okay.
You sold me on it. And now that you're no longer here selling me, the joy of the idea starts to fade. So our job is to get it to make our idea their idea. I'm a big believer that nobody is persuaded about anything. They just decide the idea was theirs to begin with.
Oh,
so I'll give you a great example. If, let's say, you're doing your podcast, okay, let's say you're selling podcast services. So, Mr. Prospect, we talked about podcast services. Tell me, what would you name your podcast? And who's your audience going to be? And how long will your podcast be? So I'm actually getting them to take ownership of the idea and get excited about it. Because the idea isn't for me to just sell them. The idea is for them to defend that idea when I'm not in the room. And transfer, in my opinion, after doing this with 12,000 people all across the globe, transfer is the part where we typically break down. And this is for a leader trying to convince their troops of an idea, or a salesperson trying to sell their product, or even us talking to our significant other about where we want to vacation this year. If we don't transfer the idea properly and get them to own it, the joy of it and the anticipation of it is going to fade. And then the chances are they could change their mind.
That is actually really interesting, thinking about what you said, the buyer's remorse piece. So when someone leaves the meeting the next day, I always say the next day, because the next day after you slept on it, it's like everything has gone away that you talked about.
Right.
But if you're getting the text follow up, if the pushback starts over, then your suggestion would be transfer is usually the thing that's missed.
Yeah. And it's because they didn't take ownership of the idea. You want them going to somebody going the next day saying, I'm starting a podcast called so-and-so, and it's going to be an hour long, and my audience is going to be this. So you want them to get so involved in owning the idea that the thought of not doing it is unacceptable.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. What do you, out of all the signals, what's the one that you think works against leaders the most?
I think they don't understand what the signal of their body is telling people. So when you see somebody sit back in a chair,
okay,
that is like, so what are they doing? Are they relaxing? Did that idea push them away? What happened there? So one thing I talk about in the book is name it. So name what just happened. Hey, Candice, we were talking about the price and I saw you cross your arms. I hope I didn't touch a soft spot there. Tell me what you were thinking. So I'm asking them to come out and tell me what that body language meant. Because psychologically, it's almost impossible for us to have a strongly opinionated thought without it showing in some way through body language. And probably the most misinterpreted one is crossing of the arms. Everybody goes, well, they cross their arms, they're cut off. Crossing the arms can mean so many things. And many times we assume that if somebody does that they're not interested. They're cut off from our idea. And I'd say that is probably true some of the times, but it's not a universal sign.
That's such a great point. I love that you mentioned just kind of addressing the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And is that a practice you've always kind of leaned into, or is that something that you had to develop over time?
I had to develop it because the biggest question I get from people is, isn't that confrontational? Don't they get weird about being called out? And so I needed to get by that too. But what I found, Candice, was people appreciate it. People want to be seen. People want to be recognized. They want to give their thoughts. So if you do it politely, it's amazing the responses you'll get. I was in a meeting where I came up with an idea and I was presenting it to the group and I saw the guy start tapping his pen. And I said, I got your tail thumping there. Why don't you help me poke holes in my ideas so we can meet on the same ground? And they just opened up like a floodgate.
Wow.
But Candice, think about the repercussions if we don't do that. I don't give him an outlet for that. He takes it with him, and that's the reason he ghosts me. He gets back to me with a polite response saying, well, think about it. And I will never know the real reason.
Yeah. God, that's such a great point. I really connected with your section on action. And I just felt like it was really powerful. You said, we often assume belief must come first and behavior follows, but the inverse is also true. Sometimes behavior creates belief.
Yes.
What would you say to someone who really needs to kind of map it out before they take a step and finds themselves kind of getting muddled in that?
You know, it's funny because we do this all the time. We always say, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, sometimes you need to see it first, and you need to see it in your head to make it happen. And this is really what manifesting is all about, right? We have those positive vibes. We talk about what we want to happen out of life. And sometimes we just need to do the behavior to make it take place. And for the people who don't believe this, let me hit you with a saying we all know, which is fake it until you make it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought when I read that line. Yeah.
Right. So we're often taught that. Fake that confidence if you need to. Fake, having done it a million times or whatever you want to fake, but fake it. And you'd be amazed at how if you do it often enough, your body starts to believe it and your brain starts to believe it. The hard part is just getting started, just
Sure.
for the first time. After you break the ice, though, it's amazing how easy it becomes.
Now, in that action section, you talk about how we kind of over inform people sometimes, and there's too many steps.
Yes.
So what would you say to someone who's kind of new with their company, or it's a new nonprofit, and there's so many moving parts? How do you choose the next step, and how do you make sure you don't present too many next steps?
Well, I think a lot of times, Candice, people look at a step as something that's big. So the next step is to sign the contract. So the next step is to send us a deposit. But steps can be small. So what I need you to do next, Candice, is I'm going to send you an email right now. Would you just do me a favor and make sure you got it? Okay, cool. Could you open it? And I'll walk you through it real quick. Those are steps. That's getting
great.
you to take baby steps with many successes built in.
Instead of sending the contract and hoping for 4 days that they sign it.
Yes. Yep. Exactly right. Because that's a big step. But we want them to take small ones. You know, a common thing, I taught a car dealership how to do this. And what you can do is you can say to somebody, I taught them when they were on the phone to say, listen, Mr. Prospect, when you come to our dealership, you're going to notice a really shiny floor because we like to keep it shiny. You'll see about 30 salespeople, and you'll see a Camaro parked dead center of the showroom. What you're doing is you're giving them little steps. So they're going to get there, they're going to the shiny floor, they're going to see 30 people, and they're going to see the Camaro. So I've gotten them to take 3 tiny steps to trust me, and now our trust has built before the sales process even starts. But that's part of action. Tiny little steps.
Wow. Is that kind of, going back to you working to get back into some of these rooms that you lost? I'm guessing 100%. that action was important for you in that season.
Yeah. And, there were times I started with stuff like, I really need you to trust me. I'm better. That's too big of a step.
Sure.
So I had to do
I'm
little
asking you to trust me.
Right, exactly. So, you had to do little baby steps to get back in.
Okay.
And I'll give you a great example. When I met my current wife, I have remarried to the most incredible woman on the planet. But when I first met my wife, I did little baby steps to ease her to the point to tell her that I was an addict at one point, and if she wanted to back out, I get it. And it was just little trust points all along the way. So when we got to that confession on my part, I was already seen as a trustworthy person. But the would have just said on the first date, listen, I used to be an addict. If you don't want to do this, I get it. Too soon.
That's really important that you bring that up, that this is a way we should think about our communication outside of the boardroom. Like this is 100%. How we communicate with our spouses and in our personal relationships as well, because sometimes things do blow up when you go, why can't you trust me again? To someone whose trust you've breached, and you feel people may feel upset about that, when the truth is you're asking for something major out of nowhere in their brain, is what you're saying.
Yes. And Candice, the unfortunate part is this can work in reverse. So I'm going to pick on the husbands a little bit. I'm a husband, so I feel justified to say this.
Pick on your own people.
If you miss an anniversary, that's a tiny trust thing. If you don't take down the garbage, it's a tiny trust thing. And as guys, we may look at it and go, what's the big deal? It was a once and done. But these things build up, and you're actually conditioning the loss of trust until it gets so large that it's tough to overcome. So we work so hard when we're dating: flowers, dressing nice restaurants, funny movies, little vacations, little love notes. All of those are building that trust. Well, trust can erode just as quickly when the person is conditioned in the other direction. And those missed signals, in my opinion, that's where relationships start to fall off the other side. And business is no different. Customer service all went lousy. They couldn't return it on time. Nobody picked up. All those things erode trust, even though they're not huge. They're tiny, but they're like snowflakes. Individually, they're not really harmful, but when you put 20,000 together, now you're starting to get a problem.
Oh, that's powerful. That's so true.
Yeah.
So
the only other thing I'd like to say about action, Candice, before we move on from it, is if you do all the parts of STRATA correctly, action should happen all by itself. If you're remembering the action chapter, I basically said action should feel like the only logical outcome to the entire process you just went through. So you're not closing somebody, you're just giving them an environment to which saying yes feels like the only logical thing to do. And that's the secret of STRATA.
No, that makes complete sense, because if they've already transferred it, then they're going, how do I get there to my goal?
Yes. And I want to get there.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. What is one question anyone listening should ask themselves before their next hard or complex conversation? So they've got STRATA, they're about to go in. What should they ask themselves? How do we prepare?
What is the goal I want to achieve with this conversation?
Do you recommend people write that down?
Yes.
Or do you? Okay.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing is, how are you going to handle the first 2 minutes of that conversation? And my advice is shut up. Just ask them questions about themselves, about them. Get a full lay of the land for them. The more people talk about themselves, the more their neurotransmitters fire. Some psychologists say that the same neurotransmitters fire then as the same ones that fire when you eat a chocolate cupcake. So when you let others talk, you let them feel good about themselves, which is undoubtedly why people like to become guests on podcasts. Right?
I need to write shut up on a note card and just put it on my desk now that you said that. Shut up.
Yep. Have a goal and shut up for the first 2 to 5 minutes.
Oh, that's so great. Now, one more question before we move into a couple other things I have is when someone's confronted with resistance, you talked about just kind of, addressing it.
Yep.
But is there a time in the reframe where maybe someone needs just patience in their resistance? And how do you handle that?
Yeah. And reframing is all about patience. It's all about just reflecting back another way to look at what you're talking about. And the best way I can give an example is, how many times have you been in a conversation where somebody said something and you're like, I never thought about it like that. And all of a sudden things are clear. So STRATA is all about patience, naming a signal, understanding a reframe, but it's all about listening and taking your time. You don't even really begin selling until the last T, which is transfer. Everything else is reading and adjusting.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I had never thought of it that way. Yeah, that makes sense.
You don't start selling until the T and the A, the transfer and the action. And honestly, if you do the T right, A isn't even selling. It's just leaving room for a yes.
Okay. It's just finalizing everything.
Yep.
Now, who do you feel like you personally wrote this book for? Is it who you were or who you're becoming?
I think it's writing it to who I was. If I could have gone back and given that addict advice, it would have been this, and it would have saved a lot of heartache. But like I wrote in the preface, I wish somebody would have told me it's not about what you say, it's how you show up. I wish I would have learned that a long time ago, but I never did. I was always taught, say the right thing, be silver tongue, get the right verbiage, and you're going to be fine. And all sales scripts revolve around this. But when was the last time you had a training session where presence was the first thing they discussed? It just doesn't happen.
That's so true.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is failing and feels invisible right now? What do you want them to hear most as you talk through this and as they look at the book?
What I would say to you is when I was in the middle of my addiction, the best way I described it was if the basement had a basement, that's where I was. And there is nothing more invisible than someone who is looked at as a derelict and their word means nothing. And nobody would trust what I said for a long time. And they shouldn't have. I was in a bad place and did some stupid things. But I would tell you there's a way back.
Okay.
I would tell you that it's a step-by-step process. Nothing happens overnight. And the best thing you can do is not compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And if you made even an incremental step forward, you're on the right path.
That's such great advice for anyone in any stage. We don't recognize the difference in yesterday and today. That's such a great point.
You know, I used to read books on stars that went through addiction. You know, there was I don't want to slam any stars and they became public already, but there was a very famous star who said when he accepted an Oscar, he remembers nothing about the entire night because he was just so high out of his mind before this ceremony,
a moment
and
like
during
that.
and after. Yeah, and you know, it's kind of nice to know other people went through the same misery.
Yeah.
But it doesn't dilute your own misery. What dilutes it is understanding that you're going to progress. And if you get better a little bit day by day, there's going to be a spot where you're like, I think I'm back to where I was a couple of years ago. And Candice, one thing I'm really grateful for is addiction's looked at a lot differently today than it was when I was an addict. 13 years ago, nobody looked on it very well. Now you have addiction centers and people who want to help and people recognizing it as a disease. So I'm very grateful that we're in the environment where if somebody needs help, they can get it and they won't be looked on the way I was when I went through the process.
Well, and thank you for allowing God to use your story so that someone else can hear that there is a road back. And outside of, substance abuse, addiction problems, we all have these dark things that can lead us off the path.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about, you shared your story very openly, but two, you found community, you attended meetings, you did all of these kind of community-based things with something that many people spend a lot of time hiding. How do you, what would you say to someone who has something they're struggling with? And it could be anything from substance to depression. Like what would you say to someone who's just afraid to put their hand up and say it out loud? And many times it's because of a seat they might be in that is at risk by saying it.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is just remember you're human. And as being a human, we are perpetually flawed. We make tough decisions. We let our brains' fears rule the game. My advice is just remember you're human and take that first step, because when I went to my first NA meeting, I was terrified until I got through the door and sat down, and it was the most welcoming group of people I think I'd ever met. So we often think of ourselves as siloed and I'm alone and I'm the only person going through this. One saying I used to teach my kids was never judge a person's insides by their outsides. And it's an important lesson, I think, for all of us. And Candice, if I can be so bold, I was an atheist during the time of my addiction.
Wow.
And so I just have to share this story. So when I met my current wife, I met her on a dating app. And she was doing things for a local church. And I'm like, listen, I'm not a church goer. I'm an atheist. And she said, can I send you a picture of me getting ready tonight? And she wanted to send me a picture of just her with her hair all nice and everything. I'm like, yeah, send it over. So in the picture, there is a sign in the background on her wall. And the sign says, trust me, God. How much bigger of a sign could there be? That now hangs in our house, in our bathroom. And I became a believer that day.
I'm really glad you shared that.
Yeah, it was life-changing. And when I let God in, man, everything just got easier.
That's so true. And always be so bold, Jake. Always be so bold. If I could tell anyone, it's crazy that God will speak to us in ways where you go, that sign is just for me. And I can't explain even in words what he's saying and how it's impacting me, but that sign is just for me. So always be so bold, because that is so true. That sign was for you. And I love that. I love that. That's still in your house. That's really special.
Oh, yeah. I showed that picture to everybody, too. I've kept that picture of her with that sign in the background. And it's like, my God, if that's, what are the odds of that happening? I mean, they're staggering. So, and I thank God every day for putting me through all the trials and tribulations of the addiction, because I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not gone through that.
Amen.
Yeah.
He'll use every inch of the stories if we let him. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if anything, that was a great example of owning the room, just sharing your story right where you are.
Yes. Honesty is huge.
It is huge. And I just appreciate the way you lead with vulnerability and authenticity. And I appreciate your time and sharing. And Own the Room's available kind of everywhere. Amazon, all the things, all the places.
Yep.
I'm going to put Orchestraight in the show notes and your website link, and definitely check it out. Jake is such a great encourager, but also just, he makes waves wherever he goes. So he is, he's worth connecting with, worth a listen to his podcast as well, because it's actually great. And everything you do comes with such energy and joy. And just thank you for what you spread to the world around you. And thanks for your time today, Jake.
Thanks for having me back, Candice. This was wonderful, and there's nothing like having a good cry on a Friday morning. It opens up the rest of the day. It feels good.
It does feel good. All right. Well, you go have a great one. Holy Business. We'll see you next time.